My father screamed, "Get out of my house." I left with 2 suitcases, but what he didn't know is that I already owned a $90 million villa in Florida, and by morning, everything changed. I still remember the sound of the glass shattering against the kitchen wall. My father had thrown my coffee mug so hard that pieces landed near my feet. "Get out!" he screamed, his face red with rage. "I'm done carrying you." The entire house went silent. My younger brother Ethan leaned against the counter with a smirk on his face, pretending not to enjoy the scene. My stepmother Sandra crossed her arms like she had been waiting years for this exact moment. And me? I just stood there, frozen. Not because I was shocked, because deep down, I knew this day was coming. "You think you're too good for this family?" Dad snapped. "You quit your corporate job, wasted your time on stupid investments, disappeared for months. What exactly do you contribute here?" I opened my mouth carefully. "I never asked you for money." Sandra laughed under her breath. "Oh, please," she muttered. "You've been living in this house for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. After spending 6 years building businesses overseas. After sending Dad hundreds of thousands during his failed restaurant phase. After paying Ethan's college tuition when nobody else would. Funny how quickly people rewrite history when they stop needing you." Dad pointed toward the front door. "You have until tonight." My chest tightened. "Dad?" "No," he barked. "I'm serious this time. I'm tired of your attitude. Look at Ethan. Stable job. Stable relationship, normal life. Meanwhile, you show up here acting mysterious like some millionaire celebrity." Ethan chuckled. That hurt more than I expected, because Ethan knew the truth. He knew where I had been the last year. He knew exactly what I owned, but he stayed quiet. I looked at him one last time, waiting for him to say something. Anything. Instead, he shrugged. "You always thought you were different, Ava." Ava, the daughter who never fit in. The daughter who skipped family dinners because she was working. The daughter who missed birthdays while negotiating contracts in Singapore hotel lobbies. The daughter who got mocked for playing entrepreneur. I nodded slowly. Then I walked upstairs. No screaming. No crying. No begging. That seemed to confuse them more than anger ever could. I packed 2 suitcases quietly while hearing Sandra downstairs telling Dad he had finally done the right thing. I almost laughed. If only she knew. My phone buzzed on the bed. A message from Marcus, my attorney in Miami. Closing confirmed for tomorrow morning. Villa ownership transfer finalized. Congratulations. I stared at the screen for several seconds. Tomorrow morning. Perfect timing. For a second, I considered showing Dad the message. Showing him the articles. The contracts. The accounts. The truth. But then I remembered every family dinner where they laughed at my ideas. Every time Dad introduced Ethan proudly while calling me confused. Every moment they made me feel small for dreaming bigger than our tiny world. No, they didn't deserve explanations. I zipped my suitcase shut. When I came downstairs, Dad didn't even look at me. Sandra did, though. She smiled. That fake sweet smile people use when they finally think they've won. "So where are you gonna go?" she asked innocently. I lifted my bags. "I'll figure it out." Dad finally spoke, without raising his eyes from the television. "Maybe this struggle will teach you responsibility." I almost said something. Instead, I nodded once, then walked out the front door. The cold night air hit my face instantly, and just like that, I was homeless. Or at least, that's what they believed. I placed my suitcases into the back of a black SUV, waiting across the street. The driver stepped out immediately. "Good evening, Miss Carter." I smiled faintly. "Evening, Luis." As we pulled away from the house, I looked back one final time. Dad stood near the window now, watching, probably expecting tears, regret, fear. But all I felt was exhaustion. 6 years ago, being thrown out would have destroyed me. Tonight, it felt like freedom. Luis glanced at me through the mirror carefully. "Straight to the airport?" I looked down at my phone again. The villa photos still sat open on the screen. Oceanfront. Private dock. White marble floors. Palm trees stretching across 12 acres of Florida coastline. Purchase price, $90 million. I leaned back slowly. Yes, I whispered. Let's go home. The private jet smelled like leather, coffee, and silence. Exactly the kind of silence I needed. I sat near the window, watching the city lights disappear beneath the clouds, while my phone kept vibrating nonstop. Unknown numbers. Family group chat. 3 missed calls from Ethan. Interesting. He hadn't defended me in front of Dad. But now suddenly he wanted to talk. I ignored every call. Across from me, Marcus opened his tablet and adjusted his glasses. There's one more thing you should know before we land. I looked up. His expression turned serious. The press found out about the acquisition. I blinked once. How? We think someone from the development company leaked it. Of course they did. A $90 million oceanfront property sale wasn't exactly small news, especially when the buyer was a 32-year-old woman nobody in my hometown thought was successful. Marcus slid the tablet toward me. The headline nearly made me laugh. Mystery investor purchases one of Florida's most expensive private villas. Below, it was a blurry photo of me leaving a meeting in Miami 2 months earlier. Sandra was probably asleep right now, completely unaware that by morning, my face might be all over the internet. Marcus lowered his voice. There's more. He tapped another article. This one mentioned my company, Carter Global Holdings. Estimated valuation, $480 million. I leaned back slowly. It's funny how people call you lazy when they can't see your work. For years, my family thought I was drifting through life because I never explained what I was building. I stopped explaining after realizing they only respected visible success. Fancy titles, predictable careers, safe lives. Not risk, not vision, not me. Marcus studied my face carefully. You okay? Honestly, I exhaled softly. I think I'm still processing the fact that my father threw me out like trash. Marcus frowned. He'll regret it. Maybe. Maybe not. Some parents would rather protect their pride than admit they misunderstood their child. The flight attendant approached quietly. Miss Carter, we'll be landing in Miami in 40 minutes. Miami, the city that rebuilt me. 6 years earlier, I had arrived there with 2 suitcases, severe anxiety, and exactly $4,000 left in my account after quitting my finance job in Chicago. Dad had called me insane. You're throwing your life away chasing fantasies, he'd said. But that fantasy became a luxury property investment company, then hotels, then tech partnerships, then international expansion. Failure after failure came first, of course. I slept in tiny apartments, cried in parking garages, lost deals worth millions, got betrayed by business partners. There were nights I genuinely thought Dad had been right about me. But every time life knocked me down, I got back up quieter, smarter, colder, and eventually successful enough that people started calling me visionary instead of reckless. Funny how money changes vocabulary. The jet finally landed just before sunrise. As soon as the doors opened, humid Florida air wrapped around me. Warm, heavy, alive. A convoy of black SUVs waited nearby. Marcus smiled slightly. Ready to see your new home? I nodded. The drive took almost an hour along the coastline. Palm trees blurred past the windows, while the sky slowly turned shades of orange and gold. And then, the gates appeared. Massive white stone walls stretched across the property, like something out of a movie. Luis pressed a code into the security panel. The gates opened slowly. Even after seeing photos, my breath caught in my throat. The villa sat directly against the ocean, glowing under the sunrise. Modern white architecture, floor-to-ceiling glass walls, infinity pools reflecting the morning sky, private marina, guest house, tennis court, helipad. It didn't feel real. The SUV stopped near the entrance. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Marcus handed me a small black box. Inside was a single silver key. Congratulations, he said quietly. You officially own the Valencia estate. I stepped out slowly, heels touching the stone driveway. The ocean breeze hit my face instantly. Somewhere behind me, cameras clicked rapidly. I turned. Reporters stood outside the gates, already gathering. News spread fast. Marcus sighed. Security can remove them. But I kept staring at the villa, at the life standing in front of me. 24 hours ago, my father told me I had nowhere to go. Now, I own one of the most expensive homes in Florida. I laughed softly under my breath. Not because of the money, because of the irony. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Dad. For a moment, I just stared at his name across the screen. Then another message appeared. From Ethan. Dad just saw the news. A second later. What the hell is going on? I didn't answer either message. Not Dad's. Not Ethan's. For once, I wanted them to sit in confusion, the same way I had sat in pain for years. Marcus walked beside me as the front doors opened automatically, and the moment I stepped inside the villa, everything went quiet. The ceiling stretched nearly 30 feet high, wrapped in soft gold lighting. Massive glass walls revealed the Atlantic Ocean like a living painting. White marble floors reflected the sunrise pouring through every corner of the house. It was beautiful, but strangely, it didn't make me emotional. People think success feels like fireworks. Sometimes it just feels peaceful. A house manager approached with a polite smile. Welcome home, Miss Carter. Home. That word hit harder than expected, because the truth was, I had never really felt at home growing up. Not after Mom died. Dad changed after that. Before her death, he used to laugh more. He used to encourage my wild ideas. He once told me I could become anything I wanted. Then grief turned him into someone colder, harder. And when Sandra entered our lives 2 years later, things became even worse. She adored Ethan, tolerated me. That was the difference. I wandered slowly through the villa, while staff carried in my luggage. Every room looked like something from an architectural magazine. Indoor spa, private theater, ocean view office, wine cellar larger than our old family kitchen. But one room stopped me completely. The library. Floor-to-ceiling shelves wrapped around dark wooden walls, with a curved reading chair facing the ocean. My chest tightened instantly. Mom loved libraries. When I was little, she used to take me to bookstores every Sunday. Dad always complained we spent too much money on books, but she'd wink at me and buy extra anyway. Stories save people, she used to whisper. I swallowed hard. For the first time that morning, I felt tears burning behind my eyes. Not because Dad kicked me out, because Mom never got to see this version of me. A knock interrupted my thoughts. Marcus entered carefully. There's something else. I wiped my eyes quickly. What now? He hesitated. Your father gave an interview. I stared at him. What? Marcus handed me his phone. Local reporters had already reached my hometown after discovering my identity online. And somehow, Dad decided to speak publicly. The video began playing immediately. Dad stood outside our house, looking irritated, while microphones surrounded him. I don't know why everyone's making such a big deal, he said sharply. Money changes people. My daughter abandoned this family years ago. My stomach dropped. He continued talking. She always cared more about business than family. If she's rich now, good for her. But success doesn't erase selfishness. I couldn't breathe for a second. Marcus took the phone back carefully. You don't have to respond. But it was too late. The damage was already done. Millions of people online had now watched my own father call me selfish, less than 12 hours after throwing me out. I laughed once. A hollow laugh. Of course. Even now, he couldn't admit the truth. Marcus studied me carefully. You know this isn't about you, right? Maybe. But it still hurt. Because little girls never fully stop wanting their fathers to be proud of them. Even successful women. Even billionaires. Even me. My phone exploded with notifications. Business partners. News outlets. Interview requests. Social media tags. And then, one message froze me completely. From Sandra. Your father is humiliated. I hope you're happy. I stared at the text in disbelief. Humiliated? He humiliated himself. But people like Sandra never see their own cruelty. They only notice consequences. Another message arrived seconds later. Ethan, this time, did you seriously buy a $90 million villa? No apology. No concern. Just curiosity. Typical. I tossed the phone onto the couch and walked outside toward the infinity pool. The ocean stretched endlessly ahead, waves crashing against the rocks below the property. Beautiful, calm, free. Yet inside me, a storm was building, because no amount of luxury erased what happened last night. No mansion erased years of rejection. And suddenly, standing there barefoot beside a $90 million villa, I realized something terrifying. I hadn't spent my life trying to become rich. I'd spent my life trying to prove my father wrong. The realization hit, like a punch to the chest. All those sleepless nights, all those deals, all those sacrifices. Some part of me always imagined Dad finally saying, "I'm proud of you." But instead, he went on television and called me selfish. A tear slid down my cheek before I could stop it. And at that exact moment, my head of security approached quickly. "Miss Carter," he said carefully, "there's someone at the gate asking to see you." I frowned. "Who?" He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "Your brother." I honestly thought I misheard him. "My brother?" I repeated slowly. The security guard nodded. "He arrived about 10 minutes ago. Says it's urgent." Of course it was. Ethan never drove 6 hours unless something benefited him. I looked toward the massive front gates visible beyond the palm trees. A black SUV waited outside, while security kept him from entering the property. Marcus crossed his arms beside me. "You don't have to deal with him today." Part of me wanted to say no immediately, but another part, the stupid loyal part that still remembered bedtime stories and childhood summers before everything changed, needed answers. "Let him in." Marcus sighed quietly but nodded toward security. A few minutes later, Ethan stepped out of the SUV, wearing jeans and sunglasses like he was arriving at some luxury resort vacation instead of after a family explosion. He stopped walking the second he saw the estate properly. His jaw literally dropped. I almost laughed. "Wow," he whispered. "This place is insane." Not "how are you?" Not "I'm sorry." Just "wow." I folded my arms. "You drove all the way here to admire my house?" Ethan removed his sunglasses awkwardly. "You disappeared for months, and suddenly you're living like a billionaire. What was I supposed to think?" I stared at him in disbelief. "You could have started by defending me yesterday." His expression tightened. "You know how Dad gets." That sentence, that pathetic excuse, I had heard it my entire life. You know how Dad gets. As if anger erased responsibility. As if cruelty became acceptable because it was familiar. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck nervously. He didn't know about all this. That's not the point. Silence fell between us. Ocean waves crashed softly behind the villa, while humid wind moved through the trees. Finally, Ethan looked at me directly. "Did you really pay for my college?" I blinked. "What?" "Dad told me he covered everything." "Of course he did." I laughed quietly under my breath, but there was no humor in it. "I wired him the money myself." Ethan's face slowly changed. Confusion, then realization, then guilt. I watched it happen in real time. "There's more you don't know," I said softly. He stayed silent. So I continued. "When Dad's restaurant failed 5 years ago, who do you think paid his debts?" Ethan's eyes widened slightly. "No. Yes." "And when Sandra wanted that kitchen renovation?" "Me." "The mortgage during COVID?" "Me." "The reason this family never lost the house?" I pointed toward him. "Me." Ethan looked physically sick now, because suddenly his perfect image of Dad started cracking apart. He never told me any of this. Why would he? I snapped. Then he'd have to admit the daughter he called irresponsible was the one saving all of you. Ethan sat down heavily near the pool chairs. staring at the ocean like his brain couldn't process reality fast enough. For a moment, I almost felt bad for him. Almost. Then I remember his smirk while Dad threw me out. My sympathy disappeared quickly. You knew they treated me differently, I said quietly. Ethan looked down. I didn't think it was that bad. That's because it wasn't happening to you. That line hit him hard. Good. Some truths are supposed to hurt. He stayed quiet for a long time before finally speaking again. Dad's losing it right now. I looked away. Not my problem. He thinks you embarrassed him on purpose. I actually laughed this time. He threw me out with 2 suitcases. Yeah, but now everyone online thinks he's some terrible father. I turned toward Ethan slowly. Is he not? That shut him up instantly. The wind carried silence between us again. Then Ethan asked the question I knew was coming. How much are you actually worth? There it was. Not concern. Not apology. Curiosity about money. I shook my head in disappointment. You still don't get it. Ethan stood up quickly. No, I'm trying to understand. Yesterday Dad thought you were broke, and now reporters are calling you some business genius. I stepped closer. You know the difference between you and me? His jaw tightened. What? When people underestimated me, I built something. I gestured toward the estate around us. You spent your whole life trying to stay comfortable. The truth landed hard. I could see it in his face. Because Ethan had always followed the safe path Dad approved of. Stable salary, predictable life, no risks. Meanwhile, I became the family disappointment for daring to dream bigger. And now, the disappointment owned a $90 million villa. My phone buzzed again. This time the notification made my stomach twist. Breaking news. Florida investor Ava Carter's father speaks out again. Marcus looked alarmed instantly. That can't be good. I opened the article, and the moment I read the headline, my blood ran cold. She thinks money makes her better than us. Father says after daughter's mansion reveal. For a few seconds, I just stared at the screen. Then I opened the interview. Dad looked exhausted this time. Angry too. Reporters surrounded him outside the house, while neighbors watched from their lawns like it was entertainment. She abandoned her family, he said again. Now she buys some giant mansion, and suddenly people think she's inspirational. I clenched my jaw. One reporter asked carefully, Sir, is it true your daughter financially supported your family for years? Dad's entire expression changed. That's exaggerated. He snapped immediately. She helps sometimes. Families help each other. Help sometimes. I almost laughed. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Years of silent support, and somehow it became sometimes. Ethan looked over my shoulder while I watched. His face turned pale. Oh my God. Dad kept talking. She always wanted attention, always wanted to prove she was smarter than everybody else. That one hurt, because it wasn't true. I never wanted attention. I wanted acceptance. There's a difference. The interview ended with Dad saying something that finally broke whatever loyalty I still had left. If she wants to act rich and important, fine, but she's not better than this family. I slowly lowered the phone. The ocean breeze suddenly felt cold against my skin. Marcus spoke carefully. You don't owe him silence anymore. Maybe not, but public revenge never interested me. I didn't want to destroy Dad. I just wanted peace. Unfortunately, peace becomes impossible when wounded people keep throwing stones at your life. Ethan sat down again, rubbing both hands over his face. He lied to me for years. I stayed quiet. He told me you stopped caring about us after Mom died. That sentence hit me like a knife, because after Mom's funeral, I had spent years trying desperately to hold the family together. Dad drowned himself in anger. Sandra manipulated everything quietly. And Ethan, he was too young to notice what was happening. Or maybe he noticed and chose comfort over truth. Either way, the result was the same. I became the outsider. Ethan looked at me carefully now. You really paid the mortgage? Yes. Why didn't you ever say anything? I laughed bitterly. Would you have believed me? He didn't answer. Exactly. Suddenly Marcus's phone rang. He checked the screen and muttered something under his breath. What happened? I asked. He hesitated. The reporters found her old apartment building in Chicago. I frowned. So, they're interviewing former neighbors. I rolled my eyes slightly. Great. Marcus looked serious though. One of them said you used to cry in the hallway after business meetings. My chest tightened instantly. I remembered those nights. Cheap apartment, broken heater, rejected proposals, investors laughing at me because I was too emotional. I used to sit outside my apartment door sometimes because I didn't want my roommates hearing me cry. Funny, nobody sees your pain while you're building something. They only appear after success arrives. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Normally I would ignore it, but something told me not to. I answered carefully. Hello. Silence. Then a familiar voice whispered, Ava. Everything inside me froze, because I knew that voice. Aunt Rebecca, Mom's older sister. I hadn't spoken to her in almost 8 years. Aunt Rebecca? She sounded emotional already. I saw the news. I swallowed hard. Yeah, apparently everyone did. Then she said something that completely shattered me. Your mother would have been so proud of you. Tears filled my eyes instantly. Not because of the mansion, not because of the money, because nobody in my family had said those words to me in years. Rebecca continued softly. She used to tell everyone you were special. I covered my mouth, trying not to break down in front of Ethan and Marcus. She kept every business idea you wrote as a teenager. Rebecca whispered. Every notebook, every little plan. I closed my eyes. Mom believed in me before I ever believed in myself. And suddenly all the anger inside me shifted because I realized something important. Dad's approval was never supposed to define my worth. I had spent years chasing love from someone too broken to give it properly. That wasn't my failure. It was his tragedy. A tear slid down my cheek. Then another. Ethan looked away quietly, almost ashamed to witness it. Rebecca spoke again. There's something else you should know. I wiped my eyes carefully. What is it? Long pause. Then, your father didn't tell you the truth about your mother's will. My entire body went still. I stepped away from the glass doors so the ocean breeze wouldn't drown out her voice. What do you mean my mother's will? I asked slowly. Ethan and Marcus both looked at me now, sensing the shift in my tone. Aunt Rebecca exhaled shakily on the phone. Your mother left specific instructions for you. Very clear ones. My grip tightened around the phone. She left me nothing. I said instantly. Dad told me that years ago. Silence. Then Rebecca spoke again. Carefully this time. That's not true. Those 2 words felt like the ground shifted under my feet. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. What is she saying? I didn't answer him. I couldn't. Rebecca continued. Your mother left you a trust fund, and control over it was supposed to transfer to you when you turned 30. My throat went dry. I'm 32. Yes, she whispered, which means it should have been yours 2 years ago. The world didn't make sense for a second. All those years I struggled. All those nights I slept in cheap apartments. All those deals I built from nothing. And there was money, waiting, locked away. I slowly sat down on the edge of the pool chair. Who controlled it? I asked quietly. Rebecca hesitated. Your father. Ethan stood up immediately. What? Marcus's expression hardened. That's illegal if she was the beneficiary. Rebecca's voice trembled slightly. There's more. My stomach dropped. What more? A pause. Then the sentence that changed everything. Your mother didn't die without updating the will. I blinked. What are you saying? She changed it 6 months before she passed. My hands went cold. Changed to how? Rebecca inhaled deeply. She added a clause. A protection clause. The ocean behind me suddenly felt too loud. Marcus leaned in. What kind of clause? Rebecca finally said it. If Ava was ever forcibly removed from the family home or cut off financially without cause, the entire trust would immediately unfreeze. Ethan's eyes widened. And what happens then, he asked. Rebecca's answer was almost a whisper. She becomes the sole controlling shareholder of everything. A long silence fell. Even the waves seemed quieter. I looked up slowly. Everything meaning what exactly? Marcus answered this time, his voice low. Carter Holdings, all subsidiaries, and the offshore investments. My breath caught. That's hundreds of millions. He nodded once. More. Ethan stepped back like he needed air. But Dad said she had nothing, he muttered. I stared at the phone in my hand. Years of humiliation suddenly replayed in my mind. Not just emotional. Financial manipulation. Control. Silence. Dad didn't just throw me out. He had been sitting on my entire inheritance. Rebecca's voice softened again. Ava, your mother knew your father. She knew how things might turn out. I closed my eyes. Of course she did. Mom always understood people better than anyone. That's why she protected me even after she was gone. Marcus exhaled slowly. This changes everything legally. I didn't care about legal right now. Something else was building inside me. Something heavier than anger. Clarity. Because now I understood the full picture. Dad didn't just reject me. He had been using my life, my future, my identity, as a shield for his pride. Ethan spoke quietly. So you're actually one of the biggest shareholders in the company we've been talking about on the news? I looked at him. For years, I said flatly. He laughed once in disbelief. That's insane. I stood up slowly. No, I said quietly. What's insane is being called a failure while owning the foundation of the entire family's wealth. Marcus stepped forward. What do you want to do? I looked out at the ocean, the villa, the gates, the headlines, the lies. And then, I thought about Dad, screaming, kicking me out, smiling when I left, humiliating me publicly without knowing the truth. I took a long breath. I want a meeting. Ethan frowned. With who? I turned slightly. Everyone. Marcus understood immediately. Board of directors? I nodded once. And my father? Silence. Then I added softly. I think it's time he learns what getting out actually means. The sun was fully up now. Bright. Sharp. Unforgiving. Just like the truth. And for the first time since that night I was thrown out, I wasn't the one being erased anymore.